So Liz Truss's first call was with President Zelensky of Ukraine. You've obviously done work with particularly women in Ukraine as well. What are you expecting to see from the new Prime Minister in terms of that all-important policy?
So I think we're going to see a lot of focus on this kind of narrative about threats. And I think Ukraine and Russia, alongside obviously China, where she's keen to show that she's going to take a strong stance, we're going to see a lot of that. I don't think we're going to see any reduction in support for Ukraine. I don't think we're going to see any change. But I would love to see, as you know, she's announced this reconstruction conference that she wants to do in 2023. That's the right plan. We should always be talking about reconstruction and where we go forward. But I think what we really need to see is a fleshing out of what does Putin must lose mean? Because for months now we heard Boris say it, we heard Liz say it, and I think we'll continue to hear her say it. But what does that actually mean? What does that look like? How much authority and autonomy are we going to give to the Ukrainians to decide what Putin has lost looks like? So I think there's a lot of fleshing out of that question that needs to be done.
It feels to me like we're moving into a new stage of the war almost. It feels unlikely that, suddenly Putin's going to take Kyiv. It also feels unlikely that he's suddenly just going to withdraw. It's almost like we're in a Cold War. He's using new tactics, like cutting off gas supply. How do we react to that?
So I think there's that really murky bit of a war. We get into that real war of attrition. As we go into winter, everything will freeze. And I have, 2 Ukrainian families living with me. Their hope is that they will have success by the time we get to winter because they know that everything freezes then. And that moment of freezing in winter will be a really interesting reset because we will need to look around the world at how much support we have. And it's a real vulnerability point. So I think one of the things I've been talking about is these abstentionist countries who haven't taken a view and haven't taken a side. As we go into winter, when everything freezes, our countries who are currently our allies...
Who are you talking about?
Oh, so if there's countries like India, for example, there are countries, a lot of the Commonwealth countries, countries in Latin America and so on and so on. A lot of them haven't wanted to take positions, same in the Indo-Pacific. We already have them with their positions, but as we go into winter, we could see people who are currently with us but going away, and we need to make sure we keep that support, we maintain that support, and that's going to be a real challenge.
How much pressure do you put on a country like India? I mean, we're trying to sign a trade deal with them as well, aren't we?
Yeah, I think that's an enormous challenge, and I think the Global South, this is what I think... So Liz likes to talk about her network of liberty. That, again, is something we need to flesh out. What does that mean? What does it look like? Is it operationalising the Commonwealth? Is it about looking at these abstentionist countries? She needs to look at how we bring these people into the fold and how we make them work. But these countries don't want to be made to pick. And we have to be very careful. It's the same question when it comes to China. You cannot force these countries to pick. And actually their priority is, in the Pacific, for example, it's about surviving climate change. In the countries in Global South, it's about the famine that's coming and the food shortages. We can't just tell them they must pick a side because we have, particularly when we're not necessarily backing that up with the support to allow them to make that choice. So it's a very sensitive diplomacy. And that's going to be the biggest challenge, I think, for this government is the nuance of diplomacy. You can't have black and white relationships. You can't compartmentalise things when they're unhelpful. You have to have that complicated discussion that's sometimes quite tough.
And how do you think Liz Truss will approach that?
Well, look, I think Liz has shown that she's willing to be a disruptor and she's achieved some things as a result of doing that. But she's also shown herself to be someone who's listened. So I went to her last September and said I was really worried about the Balkans, and in particular Bosnia. Had a list of 13 things I would like to see her deliver. She delivered 10 of 13, and the UK entire policy towards Balkans and Bosnia changed overnight. We've been leading on the world stage on it. So I think when she can see there's an urgent need, she acts and she makes a difference. And she did that by bringing people together. But I also recognise that sometimes playing to the crowd can lead to quite a dangerous position in diplomacy. There are always cameras, lights and action, and that can lead itself to those quick quips that actually are quite dangerous in the long run.
Interesting. You're thinking about, like, Macron, for example.
Yeah, and I think that was not a very sensible move. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. If she gave the answer on China, you could understand why, again, you wouldn't want to tie yourself either way. But France is a major ally. We work with them very closely. We've just come through the AUKUS relationship difficulties. And AUKUS was absolutely the right decision. That is, in the long term, one of being one of our key defences. Okay.
Are you worried that we're talking here, just Liz haven't probably explained, we're talking here when she refused to say whether or not President Macron was an ally. Yeah. Could that damage our relationship, do you think?
So I think it obviously is so important, the relationship between two world leaders, but actually we see this so much in the media where, if this person don't become best friends, there can't be a positive relationship between those countries. But the frameworks and the civil service and diplomatic relations, those are actually the fundamentals and they're not at risk in any way.
Got to ask you, are you going to run for the now vacant position as chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee?
So I'm really grateful. I've had a lot of positive conversations with colleagues over the last, I guess, 12 hours, however long today is. I've lost track of the day. So I'm seriously considering it. And I think, we need someone who understands these challenges, knows what's under the bonnet and how the engine of the Foreign Office works. And I'm really touched by how many people have reached out. So I'm definitely considering it.
Sounds like a yes.
Look, it's my passion, and I think I can bring that experience of working, countering hostile states, counter-terrorism, and, as I said, understand the Foreign Office. And I think hopefully colleagues have seen that I'll work with them.
Interesting stuff. Alicia Kearns, thank you very much indeed for coming on the programme tonight.